Fáilte and welcome to the Talking Blarney podcast, where we call out Hollywood for its paddywhackery in films and TV about Ireland. My name is Stuart McNamara and I'm here with my co-host, Bort Cross.
Bort?
Yes.
My son's name is also Bort.
Very topical for today's episode. Rob, how's it going?
I'm good, Stu. It's a lovely... we're not going through a visual means. It is a lovely sunny day here.
Yeah, second time in podcast history, which is pretty much a record.
It is. It's absolutely gorgeous out, and we're in quite a warm little room.
Yeah.
We can't open the windows anymore because there's people outside, but we're going to stick through it for this podcast for the sake of art and art's sake.
Yeah, and if you hear any kids playing, deal with it.
Yeah.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is uniquely Irish.
Yep.
And today's topic is hurling, which neither of us know much about. So we're going to do our best with no prior knowledge to explain it.
I'll have you know, I played hurling in primary school for like 6 years.
Very good.
For PE, I didn't play it properly. I was never good at it. Hurling is one of our national sports.
Yes.
It is part of the GAA, which is the Gaelic Athletic Association. People think that there's only two sports in GAA, but they're wrong. You have Gaelic football, which is our version of soccer, really more than that. It's like, imagine soccer being pick up the ball. We'll probably talk about that in a future episode.
Yeah.
You have handball, which is, imagine if you will, bouncing a thing off a funny shaped wall. I've never really played handball.
It's like tennis, but against a wall, and you're using your hand as a racket.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like, not badminton, what's the other one? Really, squash.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like squash, but use your hand, and there's particular rules about it. I've never played it, I will say. It's quite a more niche one. And you also have hurling and camogie, which camogie is effectively an all-female version of hurling, but there actually are differences between the two of them for kind of very semantic reasons, but yeah. But anyway, what hurling broadly is it's the fastest ball game in the world.
Cool. Take that, baseball.
Yes. It involves two teams anyway. We organise on a county basis here, 32 county basis. It's a ball game, so what a hurley is...
Or a hurl.
Or a hurl, although those people are wrong. It's like the main implement you use to strike the ball. And it's a piece of wood that's shaped to not be dissimilar to a hockey kind of stick, I would say.
You'd almost say it's kind of a mix between a hockey stick and a baseball bat, where the baseball bat's been flattened out into more of a hockey shape.
It's got quite kind of a slender handle, not too dissimilar to a baseball bat, but it kind of widens out there towards the end, and I think that's called the boss, is the bottom of it. So you use that to pick up the ball and hit the ball. The ball is called a schlitter. Which is an Irish word. I don't know the direct translation, unfortunately, but that's what it is. It looks not dissimilar to a baseball. I would have thought about the same size and weight.
Yeah, it's around that, except rather than having the kind of the knotting,
stitching.
Yeah, the stitching, that's the word. Around it, it has like a solid black...
It does, and there's the reason for that is you can hit the ball almost like you're playing golf down to like one side of the pitch, but generally do is what's called rising the ball, which is you use the hurley to effectively roll the ball back towards you, and then you kind of knock it up onto your hurley and like balance it on the hurley. Then you can knock it into your hand then and then hit it down the pitch is vaguely how that works. I'd advise you to look this up. This isn't a great description because I haven't played it in over a decade.
It's a mental game. I mean, it's crazy to see people playing it.
It is, and you've got goalposts at each line with goalkeepers and these lovely men in white tops who look like butchers, but they're actually the umpires. If you hit it over the crossbar between these two posts, that's 1 point, and then a goal, just in the goalpost like you would in soccer, is 3 points.
Now, the main objective of the game really is to clatter the other team in the shins with your hurley. It is
quite a violent game, particularly if you get onto like Junior B and stuff like that. It's vicious. This is
very little protection. I mean, you have a helmet on with kind of a mesh face guard. That's it.
And by the way, they had to make wearing a helmet mandatory because people still wouldn't, because they were like, oh no, I can see better, and then they'd be getting whacking each other in the head.
And the other aspect of the hurley then is that it has a metal band around it.
It sure does.
So it's even more deadly.
It really hurts. So it's a very aggressive game. Like you're allowed to shoulder tackle the other players, and if you get knocked down, well, you better get back up.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's quite an aggressive game. I think it's described in that Jason Statham film. I think he's described it like a fight breaking out in a hockey pitch, and I was like, it's not exactly a million miles off. Yeah,
I mean, he does a great description of it.
Yeah.
Which, if I weren't lazy, I would cut into this, but I won't. So,
someday, if this gets successful and we can get like a proper editor or one of us bothers to learn it, then this will totally be great. Like,
future note for someone else to do. We'll put it back in after the fact.
When we do series 2 and these are all done properly.
Never gonna happen. But the other big thing about hurling is that you said it was the fastest game in the world, and yet, unlike, say, baseball, you don't have a catcher's mitt.
No.
So you just bare hand catching this speeding ball.
Yeah, I believe you're allowed to. You use your hurley to kind of knock it into your hand.
Well, you can, but you can also catch it.
Yeah,
full
you can.
Tilt.
You can, and that would probably hurt.
Well, I think there's I've been told anyway, there's a special way of catching it to like knock your hand back to kind of reduce the impact.
I never got to the point where I was that good, Stu. Yeah, so I suppose like it is quite. Every kind of parish in Ireland would have its own club. Yeah. Really, a GAA club, and they would do Gaelic football, camogie, and hurling generally, and they're all competing in a club championship then to be the best club team in Ireland. But we also organise on a county basis, all 32 counties plus London plus New York because of the Irish expatriate population.
And I believe it's non-paid, right? It's a club rather than...
This is entirely amateur. This is entirely an amateur sport. Like, people have full-time jobs and train for this. The managers get paid. That's about it.
Yeah.
That really, and there is like GAA is a large enough organisation. They do have people that are there full time just keep things ticking over, but it's an amateur sport. It's probably the largest amateur sporting thing in this part of Europe, I would have said.
At the very least. I mean, one expert way of telling if someone's Irish when you're on holiday somewhere else is you'll kind of notice the distinctive
GA
jerseys that people be wearing all the time.
I will note that we call GAA GA, like GAA, like we just pronounce it like that. Not everyone does it, but where we're from, it would be quite common.
Yeah, it's easy enough. But yeah, you'll definitely notice the kind of very unmatching and unflattering colours that a lot of the county teams have.
That's it. I mean, in terms of that, we have Croke Park is really the main ground of its main stadium where the All-Ireland final is played in both hurling and Gaelic football and everything else. And it's one of the largest stadiums in Europe. I think it's the third or fourth largest stadium in the entirety of Europe.
Could be.
It's about 90-odd thousand, 93,000 I think is what it was. I live up quite close to it, so I do see it regularly.
Find his house,
Yeah. But I think it's definitely the largest stadium in Europe that isn't used primarily for soccer.
That's probably very fair.
That is very fair. But I mean, we do use it for soccer, in internationals.
Well, recently, isn't that a
it was because we have the Viva Stadium, formerly Lansdowne Road, which was used for rugby and soccer. But while that was being rebuilt, they had to use it, and there was quite a contentious thing there. But that's it. In terms of who are good teams at it, well, Kilkenny are called the Cats because they have like yellow jerseys with black stripes on them. They're pretty much seen as being one of the best hurling teams. They actually don't have they're the only county that doesn't have a Gaelic football team on a senior level, I understand, because they just focus so much on hurling. Some counties, generally counties will have teams in both of them. Ones will generally excel in the other. Like in terms of Gaelic football, you'd see Dublin have won 5 in a row. Kerry would be seen as having won the most. They won about 35 championships. In hurling, it's generally Kilkenny would be considered quite good. Limerick has gotten a lot better. They've won about 2018, I think, is what it was, or 2019.
I think it was last year,
I think it was 2019, yeah. And other things like that. And Clare also are quite good as well. They won in 2017, I think, or 2016. Like I said, I don't follow this really at all. I'm only remembering bits and bobs.
We have very little clue except from...
But it is very popular, and particularly in rural parts of this country, the GAA club in the parish in your town or village, and even outside of just being in a town or a village, it can just be like you see the GAA field just up a country road.
It's a huge event for the small towns. I mean, it's a every Sunday thing. Obviously, not recently, but overall. It would be every weekend.
It's a very large part of Irish culture,
particularly
in small towns. I think not say that it isn't present in cities and larger towns as well.
Yeah, but
it's a different level. Yeah,
it doesn't have the same emphasis.
Yeah, and it's worth noting as well, there are other bits in it. It was part of the Gaelic revival in Ireland in the late 1800s, where we started using our language again more, started embracing our Gaelic culture with games such as this. It also tied into being, part of, I suppose, ethnic Catholicism in a way, and it was also very much involved in our nationalist struggle in the early things as well.
We used it to batter the black and tans.
We sure did. So there's a lot of cultural aspects to it as well. It's not just sport, and it's if you're not Irish, you probably don't get how big this is at times. So I mean, it is definitely worth saying that this is a very large part of Irish culture.
Huge.
And try to see a match of this if you haven't before.
Even just, I'm sure there are clips on YouTube of just like the most horrifying moments of people getting hit in the shin.
There are, yeah. I think just watch one. I can't think of any matches off the top of my head, but maybe watch like a bit of an All-Ireland final from whenever.
Yeah. So I think we will jump into the TV shows that we watched for this week.
Yeah.
We'll start off with Family Guy because that was just a miserable slog of an episode. I thought that Family Guy was way better than it was, and oh my god, it was...
I have to agree with you, Stu. I'm going to just say off the bat, crock of shite. By far.
Easily.
I remember watching this when it came out. This is probably, 2007 did this come out?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Ages ago. They've gone to 20 seasons now.
I can remember, and I remember enjoying it at the time. This hasn't aged well. I thought this was really difficult to watch.
Besides the fact that for an episode where they're supposed to go to Ireland, very little of it, I think only the last quarter of the show actually takes place in Ireland.
Yeah.
Which is just awful.
Going to Ireland is such a small part of the plot. It's not even... It's really the C plot. The main bit is just Peter and his father. Francis kind of dealing with his death. And then Stewie and Lois is really disturbing, if you don't mind me saying B plot.
And then you have, I suppose, even a D plot there with Meg and just, haha, we all hate Meg.
Yeah,
it gets tiring after a while.
It does. I mean, I did really enjoy Family Guy ages back, and I suppose in particular in this episode, there is a quote in it, I can't feel a thing. I remember I used to be in a band, and our lead guitarist, he knows who he is, constantly used to quote that, and we all thought it was funny. I'm so sick of that. I'm so sorry, mate.
Clearly, our tastes in television shows have gotten much better because this was just awful.
I really found this hard to watch. If I didn't have to watch it for this podcast, I probably would have just watched a few clips on YouTube and just called it a day. This was, oh god. Tell me, can we just run through this a little bit? Firstly,
so I think I'll just, for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, Peter finds out that his father was not actually his father, and so he goes to Ireland to find his real father. That's pretty much the basic plot of what happens.
That's the main thrust of it, I guess. There are B plots around Meg's birthday, Stewie being into sadomasochism, which is, as a child, with his mother doing it, that's pretty fucked, if you don't mind me saying so. That hasn't aged well. That's actually a lot worse than I remember it. And I genuinely found that uncomfortable at times. And you can call me a prude or whatever you want, but
no, it was weird.
That was really weird. And
I mean, you even have the one part where Quagmire is telling a joke to a bunch of teenage girls at Meg's party, and then he's like, so which one of you wants to lose their virginity tonight? And it's like, no, this is not funny anymore. You
couldn't get away with that now.
Oh god, no.
There are, I will say, there are a couple of good jokes in it.
So I will say, both episodes, because we did this and obviously we did The Simpsons as well, both of them had a joke about the name of the airline.
Yeah.
I think the name for Family Guy was cleverer.
Yeah.
And I liked it more.
Family Guy was Derriere, was that The Simpsons?
Derriere was Simpsons.
Right.
Family Guy was Jet Green, which obviously there is actual...
I quite like Jet Green, actually.
Yeah, it's clever.
I get Derriere is actually a musical pun, as opposed to... I'll explain that later.
Well, I would have assumed that it's a pun on a butt.
I got that as well.
Oh, I was hoping you did.
I got
very worried about.
Oh no! I got Derriere. I got that as well. I was just saying an air is like a tune in Irish music, and Derriere there is a thing about that as well. I get it's a double meaning. I just said I thought it was funnier just because there were two meanings out of it.
Okay, well, considering the episode that we got for The Simpsons as well, they did not think of the high-minded meaning. They just went, it's a butt.
Yeah, so I suppose we're not going to do real spoilers for this, are we? Because it was just...
No, this one was so bad we can't even try.
So, firstly, I got a mild laugh out of the scars bit where, Peter's the clown, he's pulling up the scars, so you're not supposed to actually swallow them. I got a mild laugh out of that.
I just find that Family Guy jokes run too long.
They do.
Especially some of those ones, it just kept going. And I know that there's a thing in comedy where it goes too far and it stops becoming funny, and then it goes further and then it becomes funny again. This did not happen.
The same thing with the fart jokes when he goes to Ireland. I hate toilet humour. I do not find that funny.
It has its place, and sometimes I'll enjoy it. This time not.
No, this was just... We don't do that. Also, that's not an Irish stereotype I'm aware of. They go back to we're all violent and fighting in an Irish pub and all that.
On the plane over, I think it was Brian said there's more drunks per capita than people. And it's like, okay, first off, doesn't make any sense. I know it's supposed to be a funny joke, just isn't.
Yeah, I get the whole thing where the plane lands and it just knocks through bottles. I mean, okay, I'll give you that. That's not a bad visual gag as things go, but it's just a bit we're drunk. I get it. That's the lowest bottom humor you can use against Irish people. I mean, we talked about this in other episodes where you can make interesting observations about Ireland and be funny about it. Just saying we're drunk and Catholic that's kind of like the baseline. That's not really even funny when you're just saying, look at them, they're drunk and they fight and they're Catholic and nuns.
I'm going to say outright, the Simpsons episode was poor as well, but at least they had a bit more nuance to it.
Yeah, this
was just like the most basic tropes of Ireland thrown at you so fast that you didn't really have a chance to even laugh at anything.
I remember the Simpsons episode better before I rewatched it. I quite like the Simpsons, as Stu will back me up on this. And I thought, from my memory, the Family Guy episode would be better. But it's completely the opposite. No. This was really shit. I mean, God. I'm looking at my notes now just trying to see if there's anything else positive, anything I liked about it otherwise, and I'm really struggling here, Stu.
No, I have very few notes. I mean, that's literally my entire list.
Yeah.
I didn't even go through the characters because I don't think they employ a single Irish person for this. I think it was just people.
I'll actually, sorry, one thing I will say, it's one of the cutaway gags. Failure to Launch is a shite film.
Okay.
There's my praise. They were right about that.
Yeah, I mean, the real problem is I went through most of this episode wondering if I'd gotten the right episode.
Yeah, so did I. I was like, are they going tired?
No, like Peter's dad is there, so this must be going where I think it's going, and it just takes so long to get there.
I completely thought that... I remembered bits from this episode. I thought they were different episodes. I really did. I didn't remember this is the sequence of events that happened.
Yeah. Another bad thing, they had black taxis. That's a London thing.
I had a note of that as well. There aren't any in Ireland. We don't do that. The only place you will find them in Ireland is actually Belfast. And that's
fair, but...
That is fair, but not in this country.
They're not in Belfast. They're in McSwiggan Village. Which
isn't specified where it is, but I'll say there's no place called McSwiggan Village.
Yeah, I didn't even have to look it up. I just know
that's completely... I'm not even going to attempt to say what that could mean. I'll actually talk more about the Simpsons setting and place name, but this is just useless. I found that scene of Mother Teresa ODing in the car. I remembered that, and I thought that was funny when I was like 14 or 15, whenever this came out, but this was just weird now. I didn't quite get that.
I get it. She's technically a terrible person.
Yeah, she is, but
having her ODing and Stewie driving, odd.
It's just like these weird these cutaway gags in Family Guy. Like, they just don't age well because
they're like, they're very topical for a time.
Yeah,
similar to South Park, except South Parks do age quite well in most senses.
They do. Also, just one other thing, because I just really dislike this part. Wifey McBeaty's is the name of the pub in Ireland.
Yeah. I mean, who would ever go to a pub called that?
Also, that really is like, this goes into the whole violent thing as well, and that are all drunks who beat their wives. And The Simpsons has done that before. Not in the episode that we're reviewing, but they did do it in the previous episode, and I obviously don't like that. That's not true at all. I'm not saying domestic violence is terrible.
There's going to be domestic violence in any country, but we're not going to advertise it on a pub or celebrate it because it's a terrible thing and we'd like it to stop.
I get this isn't a kids' cartoon. This is, like, I suppose, The Simpsons, but I'll talk about that later. But this was torture to watch, and I would not recommend watching this episode. It's not about Ireland. It's not about Ireland at all. It's the most bottom of the barrel, lazy stereotype stuff about Ireland. There was no effort put into this at all. It was just literal shit humour because it was toilet humour.
Oh yeah,
at times, and there was no real resolution to this. It's like, oh, you found your new father, but Francis kind of really was your father at the end in the emotional speech, and then they do a song about my drunken Irish dad, and
it was
that's it.
And then there's Force Ghosts at one point, and his actual dad's a Force Ghost.
And I'm Hayden Christensen. I got a slight laugh out of that, but I'll give them that. But yeah, also smoking crack to replace drinking. All right.
Yeah, that's an escalation.
I just look. Is there anything else I can really mention here?
The thick sweater thing was kind of funny.
Yeah, because like I said, I had good memories of that from being younger. I can't feel a thing. So yeah, I for nostalgia reasons,
just in terms of, like, it does portray a time in Ireland when nuns were and to an extent still are quite revered.
Yes, he's always like, "Oh, hello, sister. How are you?" Sister?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there was a time a long time ago when they were quite what's the word I'm looking for here without disparaging
You're getting killed.
No, I mean, look, I'll go to hell if there is one anyway. So there's not much more I can do about that. So our mother's generation would have had to deal with nuns in schools, and they did not have the nicest time of it because nuns were very harsh, I suppose, is the best way of saying it. They didn't have a lot of empathy for people, and compared to what you expect a nun to be like, wasn't the case back in the day. So you could kind of see that there was a bit of that in it, I suppose, which was some way historic.
Yeah. I also, just because I didn't have a lot on this episode, to be honest. I knew we were going to struggle to really talk because I just hated it. I did try to look up if there were any Irish in Rhode Island because that's where they're from. There's no places Quahog. Yeah, there's a few there.
Well, I'm sure there's a few everywhere
it's basically people that moved from New York who were looking for a slightly better life. Some went to Rhode Island because Connecticut was too expensive. But there you go, quite a small population. There's a few in.
I mean, what else
around there anyway?
The town drunk was a great honour, and it's like. It's just once like
that's just
it's below
lazy.
The bottom of the barrel.
It's just so lazy.
It's like, I mean, look, we all like getting drunk in Ireland. We like it quite a lot. We're not going to deny that. I bought a bottle of whiskey later for after this show. I wish I was drinking it right now.
I wish I was drinking more during the bloody episodes too. But this,
you know, like we're not going to celebrate a drunk person like that.
No, I mean, I think. There's definitely a stereotype that we praise alcoholism. No, you don't. You don't praise like a horrendous addiction that kills people early. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, look, do we have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol in this country? Yes, we do. We have. We hold. I said this in I think the Darby Ale episode, the very first one, that the pub is the centre of a lot of Irish culture.
Yeah,
you have there's christenings there, funerals there. That's where you go to socialise because pubs can be many other things. But you know,
there's hundreds of years of history that make that the case. You can't just throw it out there like that when it's so much more nuanced than just being we just get drunk all the time.
Yeah, I think it's just they make the show constantly through, like, you know, with the drunks per capita, like we said, Landon in the beer bottles, his father's a drunk who farts a lot. Peter's like alcoholism is discussed in that, and then like at the end, my drunken Irish dad at the drinking competition, everything, which would probably kill you if you drank a bottle of whiskey like that.
I think what it comes down to is
it's just so lazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's lazy writing. Where, at least in the Simpsons episode, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, they took some amount of time to look into Ireland.
Yeah.
And obviously they wanted to have their funny humour in there, which they did.
I will say that the Simpsons, there are a couple of very small touches in that episode, which I will discuss, where they obviously paid attention, looked into it. It's very, very small things that because I was watching Simpsons one very slowly and I was looking into a couple of things. There's a few small things in the background even that are quite nice. This was just so lazy. There's probably golf clubs up in the pub as well. Like, we're not Scottish.
Yeah, they probably just threw it together in the shortest amount of time possible and it was crap. I didn't even find any reviews on this because I don't think anyone cares about it enough to review it.
Yeah, this is the worst thing I've had to watch for the show so far.
And last week we watched The Yank.
But I'd watch The Yank again. Like, The Yank was perfect because it is a parody. This isn't even a parody. This just looks like you needed to finish off the episode. You weren't really sure how, and this was the laziest thing. Sorry to keep using the word lazy over and over again, but that is, I can't think of a better word to describe this because clearly, I didn't even bother to check who'd written this, but this is. No, they didn't bother. They didn't bother. Why should I bother?
As I said, I didn't even go into characters or directors or anything because it doesn't matter because they
this is by far the worst thing I've had to review in this podcast. It is the big crock. It gets 5 crocks of shite off me. Yeah. If we have a rating system,
our rating system is either the greatest thing ever or the worst thing ever.
We need a better one.
No, this is it. You have to you take a stand. If it's good, it's great. If it's bad, it's crock shit.
This is like the crock of shite has fallen over and it's like gotten all over the road and then cars are driving through it and then dragging the shite all over the motorway and then another crock of shite's falling on the road as well. That's how bad this is.
Somebody animate that. We need that for like
when we go to video.
Just on a t-shirt or something. Alright.
Can we please move on?
Yeah. So,
oh God.
Let's move on to The Simpsons.
Yeah.
In the name of the grandfather. No. So first off, the Simpsons buy a hot tub and stay in it so long that they miss Grandpa Simpson's activity day at the home. He asks them to do something on his bucket list, so they go back to Ireland where he stayed while deployed in the war. This one was directed by Ralph Sosa and Mike B. Anderson. Mm-hmm. Both of them have pretty much just done The Simpsons, but Ralph Sosa was also on the Animaniacs, so you know, that's a great thing for him.
I love the Animaniacs. Like, when I was younger, I used to watch that probably as much as I did The Simpsons, so I'm a massive Simpsons fan. Yes, I think the early episodes are better. This is season 20.
9 or 10, it kind of...
I'm actually willing to go as far as 12.
Oh, right.
I'm actually one of these people that says, no, I'm willing to say
Isn't the general benchmark the Tony Hawk episode?
I think that's the 300th. I'm not too sure. Some people say that Principal and the Pauper, people say that that's when it jumped the shark. That's when Principal Skinner is actually Armin Tamzir, and there's another Principal Skinner. I can kind of see that. Maybe it's just the fact that I think that's a ridiculous plotline. I've always thought that, but I just like Martin Sheen as an actor playing the real Seymour Skinner, and there are a couple of good lines in it that I like the episode. Overall,
maybe if it had made more of an effect. Rather than the sitcom way of everything just goes back to normal at the end.
But they even reference that in a deliberate way, and I think that whatever. But if there
were hints beforehand.
I will say that I have listened to I tried to get as many Simpsons podcasts on this because kind of get an American or Australian perspective on this episode. I could only find one that actually did this, and they didn't really talk about the episode too much. It was just having a bit of a crack because it was Paddy's Day and they were drinking during it. Of course. So, which is fair enough. So I don't really have much of an American opinion on this episode, just my own. But I think that's the point of this podcast.
I mean, so in terms of cast anyway, we obviously have the main Simpsons cast.
Yep.
We have Colm Meaney, who plays Tom O'Flanagan. We've talked about him. Oh, wait.
Sorry, I thought a spider had landed on still just flicked it on me. I was like, oh, God.
One thing to go back to Family Guy that I forgot.
Yeah.
The name of the father is, I think I have it written down here somewhere. No, I don't. Isn't like Mickey Flanagan. Mickey McFinnigan.
Mickey McFinnigan, yeah.
Which some people have said might be a joke on Mickey Finn. Or what is this?
Mickey Finn's the booze, which is awful.
No, it's something about it being like a date rape drug.
Oh, Jesus.
Like a Mickey.
Oh, that's awful. That is, oh, God.
Like, don't know where that came from, but that was something that I read.
Can you please edit that into the other bit? That's...
Yeah, I will.
God almighty.
But that just shows how bad it is. So yeah.
I'm genuinely speechless. Who the hell thought that was funny? That's not funny. I'm actually willing to say that is crossing a fucking line.
If it was meant
Jesus Christ.
If it was meant to be Mickey Finn, sure. But other than that, no. So back to Colm Meaney anyway. We've talked about him before. Absolutely fantastic man. Great actor. He does pretty good job. I don't know if he's done much voice acting, but he did quite a good job
here.
Not
that I can think of off the top of my head, to be honest with you. I really don't know anything else he's done animated.
Yeah, I couldn't say no.
I get the impression he had like a Miles O'Brien impression in some animated sci-fi thing, although I can't remember for the life of me.
Maybe.
There's something at the back of my head that's
if only we were better researched, but we're not. So
we're working 2 full-time jobs during a pandemic. Give me a break.
So the only other kind of name in it was Glenn Hansard, who was the Irish guy who does the singing.
Yeah, it's just from the film once. Margareta, even though name I keep messing up, she was also played herself.
Yeah, so like he does mostly soundtracks, and was actually in The Commitments.
Yeah, he's also in the band The Frames, who are actually an underrated Irish band. I quite like them. Listen to the album Fitzcarabaldo, it's quite good.
Yeah, so I think once again we might just skip all the spoilers because it's a TV show from like 10-15 years ago. If you haven't seen it by now, that's kind of your problem.
I'll just kind of just get out this out of the way. I don't get the whole hot tub bit at the start. I know they have to have something to get to Ireland. I just thought it was a bit weird. Also, the swingers thing, trying to get into the hot tub. This is supposed to be a kids' TV show, and it's gotten a lot less adult as the years have gone on. But that still was fairly inappropriate. I would have thought if this is. I mean,
you'd have to hope that kids don't know what a swinger is.
I'm pretty sure like Channel 4 definitely edited that out when they show it. I can't imagine that would be, but
I mean, what I was thinking from the start is that couch gag is definitely someone's kink.
I had a note. That's really
the dogs, weird. Them with like fucking leashes on.
There's definitely something.
The dog show. Crufts.
Okay.
That kind of thing, where it's like showing off the best dogs.
Yeah, I thought that was quite something you'd see on a different website than the official Fox, if you catch my drift.
Gotta say though, I still love Rich Flanders. It's still one of the funniest gags they've ever done.
Yeah, it's great.
Where he takes off the big sweater and he's just completely shredded underneath.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this is actually slightly better than I remember, which is quite interesting. So I remember when this came out, I still kind of watched The Simpsons, not as much as I did. It was about 2009. There was a lot of press in Ireland about it because they're finally coming to Ireland and see what the kind of crack is. And yeah, I think it got a moderately okay reception at the time. Nothing fascinating. But by the time this had come out, we'd already entered into a recession, so a lot of what they said in it wasn't accurate. But I like the fact they actually kind of addressed the fact that we're not just like this country backwater anymore. Ireland did modernise. I think this is the first one we've seen where that is kind of properly addressed, and I kind of appreciated that a little bit.
It does in a way, and then in everything else that it shows Ireland is modernised, but everything it says tries to say the opposite. I mean, when they're coming in on the flight, Derry Air, which is a hilarious pun on a bus.
Yeah, I also like Derry Air is an Irish musical thing. I got both of them, but I just thought that was there as well. Maybe I invented that bit myself, but I laughed for that as well.
But so on the flight, one of the leprechauns who was flying the plane,
of course, says
alternate names for Ireland are Potatoville, East Boston, Freckle Bog, Land of Poetry, and Land of Bad Poetry. You're in that list. You're on the bad poetry side.
Yeah, I've written some stinkers in my time. Absolutely, there. Yeah, I like East Boston though. I did think that was
that
funny.
One is clever.
Well, I mean, I did describe Edinburgh as East London, Northeast Dublin. Sorry. So.
But like Potatoville, I don't even like Freckle Bog. I mean, sure,
Freckle Bog.
Bogs. There are lots of freckled people. It's just flat humour. And then for some reason, Kathy Ireland, who I had to look up, and is some kind of
model or something. Yeah, I didn't know who that was.
No one really cares.
I don't think she's Irish.
Didn't that one go on a little long as well, where she's just waving at the plane?
Yeah, because they literally put the thing saying we couldn't get her. It's like, well,
no one cares.
Yeah,
you're the Simpsons. Get someone else.
That's what they did. But I would like to talk a little bit about the pub.
Oh yeah.
Actually, if that's all right. So
there's
firstly,
a lot of stuff from the pub.
I do. So firstly, it's O'Flanagan's, Tom O'Flanagan's. Now firstly, I would have thought O'Flanagan is a slightly less common version. Flanagan would be kind of a more common Irish name.
It's that lazy trope of just, we're going to put an O on it and then it's Irish.
Yeah, I had a feeling I knew where there was an O'Flanagan's pub in Dublin, and I had to double check it, but I did. There's a place on Marlborough Street in Dublin, north inner city basically. It's literally on the Lewis. If you get the Lewis, northbound, you'll be right past it. It's called the Confession Box, but it was originally O'Flanagan's because there were two brothers, Michael O'Flanagan and his brother Kevin, who ran it, and it's actually kind of quite an interesting story. It's called the Confession Box because it's right next to the Pro Cathedral, which you will remember from our last review as the place where the two of them got married. Yeah. So that's it. So it's actually right there almost. I think there might be a shot of it in the film actually. I'll have to double check that. It was called that because during our War of Independence, a load of people who were fighting the British actually got excommunicated from the Catholic Church because killing is morally wrong. So the Catholics would say. So what they used to do was they would go into this pub and a bunch of pro-nationalist Catholic priests would secretly give them confession and communion. Because obviously the bishop caught them, they'd be in a lot of trouble themselves. So because of that, and people like Michael Collins and a lot of other revolutionaries going in there, it kind of got the name as being a nationalist pub.
Gotta get that sweet communion.
Absolutely.
Gotta get the actual flesh of Jesus.
So that's there. So there was an O'Flanagan's pub in Dublin, the Confession Box. Voted the best pint of Guinness in Dublin, I understand. I haven't been there in a very long time. I don't remember it. But
do they have corned beef and cabbage on tap?
Oh, I was getting to that.
Honestly.
What is it, again, with this corned beef
This has to be an Irish-American thing, where they love corned beef and have somehow skewed it that we love corned beef. Because
I do get those. They mentioned the broil thing again, which was in the Yank. We broil everything. No, we don't.
I think it was boil.
I thought he said broil.
Like boiled cabbage. And
yeah,
boiled...
I mean, maybe I misheard that, but whatever. The cabbage on tap. All right, I'll give you that. Bacon and cabbage is a staple in this country. I'll also just give a shout out to Joyce Beckett, Sean Wilde, Oscar Wilde, who were the four guys in the front of it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I recognise the four of them. It's James Joyce, who had written Ulysses. They mentioned Bloomsday later on. You've got Samuel Beckett, who was Irish but spent a lot of his time in France. Wasn't particularly fond of Ireland. Used to drive Andre the Giant to school.
Nice.
When he was younger. Andre said, "Oh, you were like a famous wrestler," and he was a Nobel Prize winning writer. What did you talk about? Mostly cricket, he said. They were both massive cricket fans. You see Bernard Shaw, who was another famous writer as well, who... Actually, there's a pub in Dublin called the Bernard Shaw, which has moved across Dublin. It's very hipstery. I'm not personally a fan of it myself, but I'll have to try the new location sometime. Yeah. And you also have Oscar Wilde, who we were heard was more disparaged in The Yank, the previous film. who was a proud Irishman and a fantastic writer. The Ballad of Reading Gaol is, I think, a masterpiece by him, as is the Portrait of Dorian Gray. There you go.
So I think because you first see the pub in a flashback, which is when most of this happens.
Yeah.
First off, Abe was stationed in Ireland during World War II, which could not have happened.
Yeah, well, firstly, it's the emergency over here, because we were a neutral country during World War II, and we actually called it the emergency over here because we weren't at war. Now, our neutrality was tenuous at best. We were certainly very pro the Allied side. Yeah, it was a kind of a case where planes occasionally would crash in our territory. The Germans were kind of interned, though the officers were generally looked after quite well and often found themselves to the German embassy in Dublin for a nice champagne reception.
Yeah, I mean, like, we used to get mistaken for England a lot, and so we had to write
massive writing.
And didn't they find one recently after there was a forest fire or something?
Yeah, there's a very good one in carrying on from this, referring back to our last episode, the Yankee Game. If you go out from Middletown Malbay towards the Loophead Peninsula, there's a lighthouse out there. If you go to the top of the lighthouse, they have a perfectly preserved massive era sign there on Loophead itself. So
I think the trouble there is that the UK missed a trick in not putting a load of era signs on their borders.
Yeah, that's true.
We've gone too far, Fritz. Turn around.
We did
bomb in France.
Dublin did get bombed during World War II. Now, the Germans said it was a mistake. They thought it was England. There is a thing that they bombed us intentionally as a warning, because when Belfast got bombed in Northern Ireland, which is not part of our territory, that's more complicated at the time.
I know there are a few places down the country that have been bombed as well.
Those were much minor. It was mostly plane crashes,
And then there's the whole... you fly out with your payload, but you can't fly back unless you drop your payload.
Exactly.
So you kind of have to do it one way or the other.
So we didn't really do much there. So I presume it's because in another episode where it's shown that he has a daughter in England, the English episode.
Yeah.
I presume he must have came over here on like a trip or something during it, because now we did have boats that did go between the UK and Ireland during the emergency, but these were specially designed small ships which were to get away from the massive amount of German U-boats and other submarines that were in the Irish Sea at the time, because even though we were a neutral country, they didn't like us buying stuff off the Brits and bringing it home, because we didn't have anywhere else to get certain supplies from.
Yeah.
It was very important to get food, grain, and a train across.
Exactly. The three basic ingredients to any breakfast.
There's a great story about the train. I won't tell it now, but I'll tell Stu later. We'll do it in a separate podcast.
We'll get a whole podcast on the train.
On the train.
The train episode. So yeah, the name of the town is Dunklederry.
Yeah, so it says, firstly underneath it says Celtic translation is also Dunklederry. Now, firstly, we wouldn't say Celtic translation, as we said before. We would say Irish translation, but on all of our street signs, certainly...
And we normally just have it in...
We have it like in English and Irish underneath.
Yeah,
generally
have
speaking,
it, like, translation written next to it.
Yeah, generally speaking, we'd have... they're both on the sign. They're written slightly differently.
Yeah, different font.
If you're in an Irish-speaking area, a Gaeltacht, it is only written in Irish version, which can cause a few issues. Like, generally speaking, a lot of place names in Ireland, the English version is kind of the phonetic version of the Irish version.
Yeah.
When the English took us over, they kind of discouraged us using our language and kind of killed it a little bit, almost. But they use phonetic translations.
The Irish education system did the rest.
So you kind of see this in a few place names like Kildare, Kildare in English. You can kind of see where that comes from. But then there's a couple like a Limney, Limerick. Not a million ones off, Clare. And then there's a couple of other ones where it's not like Dublin is Balia Ocha Clia.
Yeah.
There's complicated reasons for that. And then like Wexford, Kilmartin, Waterford, Port Loriga. They have older rooms, but if you actually take the three component parts of it, Dunkilderry, the Irish roughly for that would be Dunkildira. So what that roughly translates in a literal translation would be, now, feel free to correct me on this if there's a Gaeilgeoir here, Church of the Fort of the Oak Grove is what it would roughly mean.
Okay. So
that's what I worked out from it anyway.
Clearly they just took the three most common things in Irish place names and put them together.
Dun and Kill, Dun or Dune and Kill are quite common. Kill is like an old word for a church. Dune can mean fort or fortification like that, or bits and bobs. Derry or Deira is really only refers to Derry in the north, and we will comment no further on the name of that place.
So you're saying it's not London?
Shut up.
Really?
Do I have to go back to the IRA explanation against you?
London Kildare does make perfect sense.
So I don't know, but I mean, it's not like Irish place names do mean that sometimes when you translate them out like that. I mean, Ballyochly, Dublin, I think basically it's capital city is what it means.
Well, I thought it was originally Dublin.
Dublin, yeah, Blackpool.
Yeah, but that was already taken.
The British didn't realise that we use BH to be a V sound, so they said, oh, it's Dublin. It's like, no, it's Dublin. That's fine.
Either way. Yeah. So we had more U2 in this episode.
We move in mysterious ways. That's actually not a bad pun. I got a laugh out of it.
Yeah, so we had a swathe of shops that had Irish sounding names. So we had Colleen's Secret. It's obviously Victoria's Secret. I mean, we have normal Victoria's Secret here, so
we do.
Hewlett Fitzpatrick, kind of clever.
Yeah, I like that. I guess
Mick Rosoft.
That's an old joke.
But the first thing that I thought, isn't Mick a slur for Irish people?
It is in the US. So go fuck yourself.
I mean, who doesn't check that? I mean, literally saying Mick Rosoft.
I mean, yeah, don't call me a Paddy or a Mick either. I won't take that too kindly.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, Patrick is my middle name, but shut up.
Look, there's no such thing as fighting Irish, but we'll fight you.
Well, let's prove those stereotypes.
We'll beat the crap out of you if you call us fighting Irish.
I did quite like Taco Belfast. That was quite good.
Oh, I missed that one.
Oh, that was there. Well, so we don't have Taco Bell in Ireland.
Yeah,
we don't really have Mexican. It's a very recent thing.
I mean, you get it in Dublin.
Well,
but you get like it's almost like hipstery places.
We have Boojum would be the main kind of brand one that we get. Burritos and stuff.
Quite hipstery rather than...
Yeah, and there's a couple other independent ones. It's just never really taken off in Ireland, I don't think. Not in my view, anyway.
I think the older people wouldn't understand it.
No.
It's not in a slice of bread, what's the point?
Yeah, I don't... Yeah. I mean, I suppose that is kind of it. You kind of still get these old pub buildings kind of nestled between more modern things now. It's not uncommon across a lot of parts of Ireland.
I mean, we do our best to keep our heritage alive in a lot of ways.
There's it's not uncommon to see kind of older, the old kind of red brick Edwardian or Victorian buildings alongside much more modern things because we don't knock some of these things down.
Yeah.
Like if you go to Limerick City and you go up to Patrick Street, I think it's Patrick Street, and you'll see to like the left hand side all the old kind of red brick buildings there, and they're all listed buildings. If you look very closely, it's because they have bullet holes embedded in them from the Civil War. You can't tear down those, even though a more modern opera centre is supposed to go in there for the last 11 years, any day now. So they can't knock that down. So it's not uncommon to see that kind of a jarring contrast between something old like that old pub and more modern things around it. It's not a million miles away from the truth. Yeah.
So then they had a variation on the old gag of the plum floating in perfume in a gentleman's hat.
Yeah,
I like that. They ruined it because it's like Bushmills in a potato on a Guinness with spit in it.
No, he says, I asked for an Irish drink and he spits in it, and there you go. It's like, okay, if it was just that, that would have been an okay joke, but yeah.
But first off, Bushmills?
I like Bushmills.
I know.
But Bushmills is the Northern Ireland, seen as the Protestant whiskey, although Jameson is also founded by a Protestant.
Yeah, but Jameson is way more common in Ireland. It's associated with Ireland way more.
I think people would see Bushmills as being a slightly higher class whiskey maybe, but I will say I like both of them. I'm a big fan of Bushmills black and white label.
Yeah, of course, they're great. It's just it was an odd choice when they could have went for Jameson.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just for name recognition, let's say.
Yeah, so that's it. Can I just get to another point in the pub? There's a few small little details I quite liked. The posters in the background of the pub I actually really liked because they clearly put a lot of effort into it.
Oh yeah, they were really accurate.
Like, they had both a Lion's tea and a Barry's tea, and so there's no fights. I was like, that's it.
So anyone who doesn't know, Ireland has one big, almost civil war, you might say, and that is...
you should say that.
we have two brands of tea.
Yeah.
And as Irish people who've been oppressed by the British for quite some time, we like a lot of tea.
We sure do.
And so there's a point of contention between which of the two brands of tea is best.
Yeah. So we got Barry's, which is mostly more of a Munster-based tea, I would have said, and then Lyons, which is more the rest of the country.
I'm going to keep that in.
Okay. Oh, God.
Just a giant pause and then sneeze. Yeah, so I think that the pub was decorated really well compared to how they actually look, which a lot of movies and TV shows don't get right at all.
There is one thing. Now, we'll talk about the smoking ban in a second, because I thought it was interesting bringing that up, but it's just a small thing I'd like to touch on. In the flashback where he's in the pub in the 1940s 40s, I presume, must be when
Is it
that
the
is.
American flag?
Well, the American flag is an odd choice, but I don't think that's too egregious. A lot of Irish people would have been to America at that point.
Of course, it's just weird to have it as a decoration.
It is, but I don't think it's too egregious. Now, I don't want to sound sexist when I say this, but...
Oh, I'm going to make sure he sounds extra sexist.
There's women in the pub drinking pints, and...
Someone's against women, are they?
It was generally at the time very uncommon in Irish pubs, particularly in a rural setting as that was, for women to drink pints in a pub. A lot of pubs actually would refuse to serve them pints, and it was a famous story of an Irish feminist movement, I suppose, at the time got together, and they went into a pub, and they were basically protesting against not being able to get a pint of Guinness. So there were 20 of them went in there, and they said, "Can we get 20 glasses of sherry?" And the barman said, "Of course, ladies, of course, you can't. Here you go." And they asked for 1 pint of Guinness with it. Iran says, "Well, I won't give you a pint of Guinness," basically. And they refused to pay the rest of the order. He called the guards, the police, to arrest them and come in. They then took him to court for failure to fulfill the order, basically, and he got done for discrimination. So that's that. But that is I think it's worth telling that story. It's not common. It wouldn't have been common at the time for a woman to drink a pint in a pub. I just felt it was just something worth pointing out. At
the very least, historically, they would have been in the snog, which is kind of a woman's-only area of a pub.
Pub was very much a male... Particularly up by the bar would be very a male-dominated area. Like a woman's area. Yeah, that's it. So I just felt it was worth mentioning that.
I mean, Rob, the men go to the pub to get away from the wives. They can't have the wives coming in.
I feel it's a small thing, but it's there you go. And I love that you can literally trace an important example of Irish feminism in law to literally wanting to drink a pint in a pub. I think that's beautiful in a way.
As you should. So then they actually go all the way to the north. Now, obviously, it's not shown where Donkildary is.
Yeah.
But at the very least, even from Dublin, isn't that like a 4-hour drive?
I've worked this out. So, firstly, there's no McEllis Island.
Well,
that's obviously
that was nonsense.
I thought that didn't land at all. The only bit I liked,
Statue of Liberty.
The only thing I liked at the end is your brothers. I didn't say you got along. That was actually okay.
That's clever enough.
So the 3 places they go that exist are the Giants Causeway, James's Gate, which is the Guinness storehouse in Dublin, and they go to the Blarney Stone. Now, so the route that they go is they go to the Causeway first, then James's Gate, then Blarney. So that would take you from actually near Bushmills in the north, funnily enough, where the Causeway is, through Dublin down to Blarney in Cork. So if you just drove between the 3 of those places, Stu, in a car, average kind of, with no real heavy traffic or anything else, and you just basically went from Bushmills, Dublin, Blarney.
That's a complete pipe dream, Rob. There's no way you're not getting traffic between those 3
Well,
places.
assuming if there wasn't, because you're literally driving through Dublin city centre, by the way.
It's an apocalypse, and there's no one alive left in the country except you and your car.
You were driving through Dublin city centre to get to the Guinness thing at this point. It would take you 5 hours 43 minutes with no traffic, and that's not including the time you spend stopping and looking at these places. The total distance would be 256 kilometres, and we're to believe they did this in a day. It is conceivably possible to drive these 3 places in a day, but you wouldn't be doing much else.
Also, they're on buses, so...
Which I think there's no...
They have a red double-decker. It's that's a London bus.
They do have promotional ones in Dublin for double-decker, the literal tourist bus have those in Dublin.
Yeah, I know they have the red tour buses,
but you wouldn't use it for long distance. So I just felt it was worth pointing out that that's not something you could do in a day in Ireland. That would be 3 separate days, really.
Oh, definitely. Then they go to the Giants Causeway, obviously, you said.
And do Hubert.
And I just have it written down here, clever, with a question mark, because I'm like, it's a good idea because it does actually resemble the Hubert board. Yeah. So it's kind of clever.
I kind of thought, I was like, that's actually a clever use of that. It's a lot better than anything I could have probably come up with myself.
Yeah,
so
probably.
Fair enough.
But you're an idiot, so
That's true. So I thought that was good.
And then they disrespect Guinness. They said that the secret recipe is bog water and chocolate syrup.
Get out.
Which is just... How could you say that about that beautiful drink?
And this is another thing as well, and Family Guy do the same thing. All the Guinnesses there do not have heads on them when they're in the glasses. They use the wrong type of glasses also. We don't really drink beer in this country in the glasses with the handles on them, the steins.
Yeah, that's very much a German
thing. That's kind of in America because of Germans. We don't really do that at all. I'm not saying that you don't get that in some Irish pubs. It would really be local craft beer ones would have that.
Yeah, they have specialised.
Yeah, we don't really do that here. It's a minor thing, but it's very much we don't drink from steins like that at all, or those types of glasses.
Yeah, I mean, isn't those type of glasses are there to keep the drink cooler because you're not warming it with your hand.
Yeah.
But in Ireland, we just kind of don't care. Cause
It's a cold country.
It's normally cold anyway.
It's going to be fine, really. Also just the thing of, just there being an empty pub in Ireland. I mean, I know we just discussed Irish drinking stereotypes earlier, how wrong they are, but that's
but look, there's always going to be a certain level. I mean, you have retirees who mightn't have much else to do, and so they will spend a portion of their day in a pub.
Yeah.
Which is a sad fact, but it is a fact, and at least they get company there and a nice pint.
We should maybe talk a little bit about the smoking ban thing here, because I think it is a plot point.
One more part with Blarney Castle. I did enjoy the joke of Blarney Rubble.
That was quite good as well. I really enjoyed that.
And then they had Irish Nelson.
Carving his things into parts.
That was the only thing, though, is like knives are kind of illegal to walk around with here.
Like, definitely a flick knife is.
I mean,
that would be illegal, but anyway. Unless you're one-handed, I believe. You're allowed to have a flick knife then.
That is a weird loophole in the law.
Well, think about it. If you couldn't, unsheathe the knife, you only had one hand, you'd have to flick it, so you can...
We're going to have to get someone to look into that, Rob.
Well, I know a lawyer, so...
Do you?
I do. And speaking about the law briefly, because there's a couple of things here.
Yeah, the smoking ban.
Smoking thing, but also them buying the pub. Now, I work in a thing where it involves me having a certain knowledge of laws regarding these things. You can't sign a contract when you're drunk, so that invalidates the whole thing.
Rob, I mean, as this and Family Guy have shown, how would we ever sign contracts ever? Because we're always drunk.
So basically, that contract is null and void. Also, when you're buying a pub, it's not just the deed to the building. You can buy the deed to a building where a pub is, but the license itself is separate from that. And that license is very, very expensive depending where. We haven't issued any new pub licenses since 1916. So when the British were still here, that's it. If you want to open a pub and serve alcohol, you need to buy an existing pub license. There are no new pub licenses.
I think we'll get into pub licenses a little more in a different episode.
Yeah, just to note.
There's a lot there to go through with
There is, but the smoking bans do. Maybe we'll just talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so basically, the government decided that there's no smoking indoors.
Yep.
The biggest thing it affected was obviously
the pub.
The places we work. I mean, we used to be in school trying to have a smoking back class. No, obviously. It used to be fine.
Miss.
Obviously not, no. It took a big hit for pubs. People were very resistant to it. They didn't want to stand outside in the cold.
But it's kind of a weird thing where we took it. We were one of the first countries in Europe. I think we were the first country as a whole in Europe to really have a smoking ban. But I remember being in the local pub when I was younger, and you wouldn't be able to see the floor.
Yeah, we were probably pretty much the last generation.
We would have been, because I can remember it.
Pre-smoking ban.
But the interesting thing that's kind of come out of this is that, well, the publicans realised they have to have an area where people can go and smoke and be warm. So they made smoking areas. They made sheltered smoking areas in with the heater. Some of them are more outside than others. Let's put it that way.
Look, they've made very nice outdoor areas which people use for non-smoking activities now.
They do, because sometimes it's because of this, there are just generally nice places to sit outside a pub. On a nice day like it is now, you can have a pint outside and relax, and you don't have to smoke. But it's also an interesting thing as well, and I've talked to a few of my cousins that have actually said this. They've met their partners in a smoking area because
that's cute.
You go out, because now if you were a smoker at the time or whatever, one of your friends was, and you go out for a chat, you'd go out with them, and you think is even just asking someone for a light or everything else, you both smoke, so you already have something to talk about.
Yeah.
And Irish relationships have actually sprung up to this, so it's kind of a weird thing where it's changed it's probably been the most significant culture change to pubs since licensing acts, really.
Yeah, I suppose.
And it's made a big impact, I think, for the better. And also people some people don't go outside to smoke now, so it's and quit, so it's better. And
on the other hand, though, then you have the poor bastards who don't smoke, who have to sit and watch everyone else while everyone else is out having a fag, and you're just sitting there guarding the table and shit. And it's like, that's kind of sad for them, but there's not much you can do about that, I suppose.
That's it. So
then they get arrested.
So firstly, they're not police, they're the guards, and we call them the guards in this country. Gardaí Síochána, it means guardians of the peace, keepers of the peace. Yeah, we don't refer to them police in this country.
They're in a completely yellow car, which was weird.
Yeah, that's not right.
They called it a paddy wagon, which first off,
that is actually a racist term in America.
That is completely racist because it was rounding up the paddies all the time. So why the fuck would we call it a paddy wagon?
I don't think I've ever heard someone use that term for we just say a Garda van in Ireland. I would have thought. Yeah. Also, the courtroom scene is wildly inaccurate. Irish courtrooms are not set up like that. I get it's a cartoon and everything else, but that's completely wrong, you know.
And Mr. Potato Head doesn't live here. Stop asking.
I've actually never made the connection that Mr. Potato Head could be Irish until this, so that kind of opened up a few things for me.
If he had an Irish accent, but I think in Toy Story he might have been almost a Jewish caricature stereotype.
I don't know. I'd have to look into it.
And then he says the good old days of Angela's Ashes, which I know you would have some
we're going to review Angela's Ashes at some point.
It's going to be like a 2-hour podcast.
And it's going to just be a lot of me giving out about how wildly historically inaccurate that is and a couple of other things, but I think we should probably stop while we're ahead, Stu.
Yeah, so I had a few bits of trivia there before we finish up. The crest and jersey of Celtic Football Club appear in O'Flanagan's pub several times in the episode.
I did notice that.
And Celtic are a Scottish team.
But they're a lot of Irish. They're the Irish team in Glasgow, and a lot of people would be fans of them here. So
there is a connection there, but
it's fair enough. Yeah,
it's a little tenuous. This is the first time in the show's history that it was premiered outside of the US.
It was.
It was shown on Sky 1 in the UK.
Yeah.
And the big one is that this episode's plot is based off of the episode Family Guy, where Peter learns he is Irish and his biological father
they did a better job. They did a better job. I'd be willing to say it's not a crock of gold quite. I'd say a crock of bronze maybe, or fool's gold. It's a compared to the.
You can't do it, Rob. It's a hard and fast gold or shite. There's no in between. There's no nuance on the internet. You either hate it or you love it.
Fine, gold. It's not as season 20 of The Simpsons goes. It's not bad. It's fine. And compared to the Family Guy episode, if you're doing like a comparative literature.
Oh yeah, I mean
this is literally shit and gold. That's the comparison.
Unfortunately for me, I watched the Simpsons episode first and then the Family Guy episode, so I was going from bad to worse. If I had gone from the Family Guy episode to this, I would have lauded this episode from the rooftops for being so much better than Family Guy.
I did watch the Family Guy one first, then the Simpsons. Now I was more familiar with the Simpsons one, but I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, I suppose I'll have to say crock of gold for this one as well, because
that's it.
It at the very least did some good for Ireland, I suppose, and obviously it was a huge thing for the Simpsons to go to Ireland.
I mean, I'd say send us your reviews, but just don't watch the Family Guy episodes. I mean, look, just don't bother. I
mean, we're going to tell you not to. If you decide to do that yourself, go right ahead, but it's bad. Watch it. Tell us what you think. You can send your reviews and ratings in to talkingblarneypod@gmail.com. So next week, we're actually going to change it up a bit, and we're going to do an episode on Irish superheroes.
We are.
So that'll be interesting. I know that Rob was once the president of Nerd Society.
As were you.
Oh, I was as well. But I know that Rob being the president of a Nerd Society, his superhero knowledge is lacking.
I mean, look, superheroes reached their peak with the 1960s series of Batman. So there is really nothing else that needs to be said.
He's reading this off a card. He's no idea what he's saying.
Adam West is the best Batman. Fight me.
So,
so if you would like to give us your reviews of this awful Family Guy episode or this pretty okay Simpsons episode or anything other thing that we've done, or if you have any things else you'd like to point out to us, contact us on Twitter @BlarneyPod. Or email us at talkingblarneypod@gmail.com. And we love to hear your feedback, guys. We really do appreciate it. Like I said, our last episode, that was entirely down to something someone suggested.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. If you have any suggestions, please send them on. We do read everything. We really appreciate it. And, without your help, we don't find excellent things like that to review, which are exactly what we're looking for. So for me, it's goodbye.
One thing that I was trying to highlight to you, Rob, if you would like to tell a friend just to help us build up the podcast, that would be absolutely fantastic, and we'd be very appreciative of you for doing that. It's goodbye from me and goodbye from Rob. We'll see you next week.
Cans.